So as you can see, we have a clean slate out here. We have nothing created. The code base is all empty. And of course, I just have an end folder in this one because we're creating everything from scratch. So there's nothing out here. I'm going to create the first thing, which is create React app. And let's call this app as game. I know that's very fascinating, right? Well, I just want it to be very simple. If you have any other name, go ahead and give that name. So let's call this, it will start creating everything for us. And we'll just give it a second for it to get started. Now remember, I'm not going to be doing anything fascinating. It's all what we have learned. And of course, I'll be sharing the CSS files with you so you can go and check out in the resources up there. And if you already have the resources, go ahead and do it with me. And if you have any issues, of course, hit me up in the Q&A section. I just wanted to utilize this time when the installation happens so that I can pass on any messages that may be there. Now I think the installation is kind of done. And it installed so many things. Fantastic. Okay, now it's installed. Let's just go quickly into cd game so that we are in the folder. Let me just clear the console, and you can clear the console using command K if you're using a Mac. And let me just do npm start. Okay, I also have the Sublime Text open. Let me see if the code got generated. Yes, it is. So I have everything in here. The blank slate gets created. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and copy some CSS files out here so that I have all the code necessary checked in. So I'm not doing anything fascinating, just a couple of CSS classes and styling in there. Okay, now let's go to the app.js where we start our coding. Let's close this. Instead of to get started, let's just create a, let's say, quiz component. Now when we create a quiz component, we need to make sure we import a quiz component. So you do a quiz from dot quiz. Now you will say, I don't even have dot quiz file created. Yes, and that's what even React will yell for. So let's just go and create that dot quiz file. So in the source, let's just create this new file called quiz.js. Let's save it in the same location, and let's make sure we have import React. Let me close this. React from React. Fantastic. Now let's just go and create this. So class quiz extends component. Again, I don't have the component defined yet, so let me just do that. So I'll just do a comma component. Okay, so I have the React quiz class created. I of course need to make sure I do a render out here. So render something. For now, I'll just return a div with the class name equals quiz. That's all. And again, this is all the CSS I have already provided, so it should work. Let's just save this and let's make sure we do an export. So export default quiz. Okay, now it should start showing you a small line on the top because we don't have anything coded in yet. So that's the first thing that we're gonna see. The next thing we will say is let's add one more div in this, which is div class name is equals to quiz content, and the div gets completed. So now we have one more CSS class added, which is div content. So now that we have the divs created, let's just quickly write our first question, which is what is the sum of, let's say, 5 and 5 question mark. And then let's start giving some data. Now I have already created some of the content here, so you can just expect this to be small classes, which CSS classes, which is already there, which should start giving it. Let's save it and see if this reflects correctly. and it should display the question. Now let's just add the CSS class which is text info to it. So let's just add a span here, so at least we can see a different color out here. So class name is equals to text info, and I'll quickly show you what this text info does. Span, let me just copy this, copy it here, and then close it out here. Span. Okay, now I'll just show you what span text info does, which is out here somewhere. Yes, so it just increases the font size, it changes the color a bit, and it also adds some boldness to it. Let's save this, and we should start seeing an updated version here. I know that's too big, but we will fix that. So let's also fix this by adding a p tag, and class name is equals to question. So this is just a standard CSS I've added, where I just increase the font of this entire thing completely. Let me just close the p tag and save it. So you should see the entire font changes, and now we have our question ready. Now how do we create the fields, or how do we create the question or options that we have? So I have a CSS class which is div, class name is equals to field. I think it's field or fields. Let me check. It is fields. Okay, let's add that as fields. Let's do a div, and in the options there's something called as a div class name is equals to, I think it's field block. Let me just double check. It's field block, that's right. And I close the div again, and in there I'll just pass in the content as 10. Let's save this. It should display me 10. Fantastic. Now let's copy this and paste this. So we have our skeleton in place. It should all say 10 for now, but we will fix that soon. Now let's quickly also add our button out there at the bottom. So the way we add the button is, of course, let's give the class name. I think it was play again. Let's close this div. So we have a class. Now let's write the button. So a class name equals to button, and let's write what we need in the class name. Let's say play again. Let's close the a tag, save it, and we should start seeing the anchor in the bottom. So you see the play again button as well. Okay, I think I remember why this is not showing up as separate components, because I had another div which is class name equals options. I think that's what it gave it the flex property. So div, closing it, and let me just copy all the options and put it in the options div. Let's save it, and now all the options should hopefully come in the same line. Fantastic. So our skeleton is pretty much ready. So the CSS was always in place. All I did was added my HTML to it. Now my code looks good. Now comes the question on how we generate things randomly and how do we compute things. So I'll see you in the next class, where we continue our discussion on the topic.